Hey, when I was in high school, I had two sheep. One was named Alonzo, one was named Gonzo. They were supposed to be projects for FFA. That's right. I was a future farmer of America. That's right. But they became more pets than projects. And here's what I noticed about my sheep. They weren't very smart. They weren't real bright. Okay, they were pretty helpless. They were pretty stubborn, though. Even though they were helpless, they thought they could do everything by themselves, and they smelled really bad. I mean, it was just horrible. But here's one thing they did do. They knew me. They recognized my voice. I would go out to the barn, and I would, especially around feeding time, and I would go out to the barn and I would call them and they would come running because they recognized my voice, because they had heard me before. They had spent time with me, so they knew who I was. Now in John chapter 10, Jesus is walking through the temple, and the people kind of gather around him, and they start giving him a really hard time, and they're like, hey, who are you anyway? Are you really the liberator? Are you really the king? Why don't you just make it really clear? Why don't you just come right out and tell us? And Jesus is like, you don't get it. I've been telling you all along. You don't get it. You don't hear my voice. You don't recognize my voice because you're not part of my flock. You're not one of my sheep. And then he tells them this in verse 27 through 30. He said, my sheep respond as they hear my voice. I know them intimately, and they follow me. I give them a life that is unceasing, and death will not have the last word. Nothing or no one can steal them from my hand. My Father has given the flock to me, and he is superior to all beings and things. No one is powerful enough to snatch the flock from my Father's hands. The Father and I are one. Jesus compares us to helpless, stubborn farm animals. It would be kind of cool if he compared us to, like, I don't know, jungle cats or something, that was amazing, some kind of really cool unicorns, something like that. But instead, he compares us to sheep, and he says that we're sheep, and that we're helpless, and that we need him. We need to be a part of his flock. And the secret to knowing his voice and being a part of his flock is just spending time with him, okay? And recognizing his voice. And then his sheep, they hear and they follow, okay? His sheep, not only do they hear, but they follow him. They recognize his voice and they follow him. They go where he goes. And as a result of that, he says this, if you're a part of my flock, I'm going to hold you. I'm going to hold you in the grip of grace, and nothing is going to snatch you out of my hand. Nothing, no one can snatch you from Jesus' hand. If you're a part of his flock, if you're hearing, you're recognizing his voice, you're following him. And then he says this, death will not have the last word. I love that. It's awesome because death is not the end of the story. If you're in the flock, death is not the end of the story. It's just a transition. It's just a chapter in the story. It's just the step to greater things. So we listen, we recognize the voice of the good shepherd, and we follow him. We become a part of his flock. Be the flock. All right, that's our goal. That means, and he compares us to sheep for a reason, because we are in desperate need of a shepherd. We are helpless, whether we admit it or not. A lot of times we're stubborn, and we don't admit it. But we need to hear his voice. We need to recognize his voice. We need to hear and follow. And we need to realize that we're safe in the love of the shepherd. He's got us in his grip, and that's a really good thing. God bless you guys. Giddy up!